She stood motionless as her fiancé destroyed her before the assembled crowd, casting her ring into wine as though it were worthless. Then, the doors burst open violently. The Vampire King, believed to be nothing more than legend, knelt before her, placed his ancient ring upon her finger, and declared her his queen before the entire court. Serena's hands trembled uncontrollably. She pressed them against the silk of her engagement gown, white, adorned with gold embroidery, selected by Alaric himself, and struggled to steady her breathing. The moonlight palace blazed around her with 1,000 flickering candles. Nobles laughed and danced, musicians performed, servants poured wine that exceeded the value of her family's remaining estate. This evening was meant to salvage everything. "You appear pale, darling." Her mother's whisper carried barely concealed anxiety. "Smile, they're observing us." They were perpetually observing. Since her father's passing 2 years prior, every noble eye had tracked the Vallon family's descent from prominence. Failed investments, mounting debts, rumors that their title had been purchased rather than earned. Tonight promised to silence all criticism. Lord Alaric Dorn, wealthy, influential, handsome, had selected her. The music swelled. Alaric ascended the raised platform at the ballroom's center, and silence fell across the gathering. He looked magnificent in deep blue velvet, his golden hair catching the candlelight. Serena's pulse quickened as he raised his glass. "Friends, nobles, honored guests," his voice resonated throughout the hall. "Thank you for joining me in celebrating this joyous occasion." Serena approached the platform as they had rehearsed. 3 steps upward, stand beside him, smile toward the crowd. Yet Alaric's gaze passed over her completely. "I've assembled you here tonight, not for celebration, but for truth." The initial touch of dread crept down Serena's spine. "For weeks I believed I was honoring a noble house, the Vallons, an established family, or so they represented themselves." His smile sharpened like fractured glass. "But love demands honesty, and I cannot in good conscience bind myself to deception." The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Serena's mother gasped. "What? What are you doing?" Serena whispered, frozen 3 steps below him. Alaric gazed down at her, his eyes containing nothing but cold satisfaction. "The Vallon title was purchased 50 years ago by your grandfather, a merchant who bought his entry into nobility. Your bloodline is common, your estate is mortgaged beyond recovery, and I placed his hand over his heart, was deceived into offering pity." The crowd's murmurs transformed into scandalized laughter. "No," the word escaped Serena's lips, small and fractured. "That's not—" "You were planning to use my wealth to settle your debts," Alaric finished. "Yes, I imagine that was the strategy." He withdrew something from his pocket, her engagement ring, the one he had placed on her finger merely 3 weeks earlier. "Here, I believe this belongs in a more appropriate location." He dropped it into her wineglass on the nearby table. The ring descended through dark red liquid with a soft clink. "Better submerged in shame, where it belongs." The laughter intensified, cruel, delighted. Serena's vision blurred. She witnessed her mother collapse into a chair, hand pressed against her chest. She saw nobles she had known since childhood turn away, smirking. She noticed Alaric's cousin, Elena, his mistress, she realized now with sickening clarity, standing in the crowd wearing a knowing smile. This had been orchestrated. All of it. "I apologize that you traveled all this distance," Alaric announced to the assembly, his voice saturated with false regret. "But I couldn't permit this charade to continue. The Dorn name signifies something. It won't be tarnished by—" Every candle in the ballroom extinguished simultaneously. The darkness was absolute, instantaneous, wrong. Gasps replaced laughter. Someone screamed. Then came the cold, a penetrating, bone-deep cold that transformed breath into frost and made the very atmosphere feel weighted with ancient power.
"What's happening?" a voice cried out. The grand entrance doors, massive oak reinforced with iron, exploded inward, not with force, but with shadow. Darkness poured through the doorway like living smoke, and in its wake, candles reignited with blood-red flames. The warmth fled the room entirely. Serena's breath emerged in visible clouds. A figure stepped through the destroyed entrance, tall, cloaked in black that seemed to absorb light, pale skin appearing carved from marble, hair dark as a moonless night falling past his shoulders. But his eyes made Serena's heart cease, crimson, glowing faintly like embers in darkness. The ballroom descended in terrified silence. "Enough," the stranger said. His voice was soft, yet it carried to every corner of the hall with unnatural clarity. He began walking forward. The crowd parted like water, nobles stumbling over one another to clear his path. Some made warding signs, others dropped to their knees. "Vampire," the word rippled through the crowd in horrified whispers. But not just any vampire. Cale Draven, gods protect us, the Vampire King. The Vampire King was legend, a nightmare story to frighten children, the ancient lord who had vanished 300 years ago before the Treaty of Blood that ended the wars. Yet here he stood, and his burning eyes were fixed on Serena. He crossed the ballroom in seconds that felt like hours. Each step was silent, predatory. When he reached the platform where she stood frozen, he didn't climb it. He simply materialized beside her, as though he had stepped through space itself. This close, she could observe his face clearly, beautiful and terrible, ageless and sharp. He carried the scent of winter nights and ancient stone. "Hello, beloved," Cale Draven said, his voice a caress that made her skin prickle. "I've been searching for you for such a very long time." Then he knelt before her, reached into his coat, and produced a ring, not gold or silver, black obsidian, carved with symbols that appeared to writhe in the red candlelight, set with a stone that pulsed like a beating heart. "You once wore my ring," he murmured, taking her trembling left hand. "In another life, in another time." I don't know you," Serena whispered. His smile carried sadness, ancient sorrow. "Not yet." He slid the ring onto her finger. The ballroom erupted in chaos. The moment the ring touched Serena's skin, pain lanced through her hand. No, not pain, recognition. Red light erupted from the obsidian stone, wrapping around her finger like living thread. It burned both cold and hot simultaneously, spreading up her wrist in delicate patterns resembling ancient script. She gasped, attempting to pull away, but Cale's grip remained gentle yet immovable. "What did you do to her?" Alaric's voice cracked with fury. "This is witchcraft. Guards, seize him." No one moved. Cale didn't even glance upward. He was staring at Serena's hand, at the marks now glowing beneath her skin, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Reverence, relief, and beneath it all, grief so profound it could drown worlds. "The bond remembers," he said softly, "even if you don't." "I said seize him!" Alaric seized a guard's sword and rushed forward. Cale's eyes flickered toward him, just a glance, nothing more. Every chandelier in the ballroom shattered. Crystal rained down in a glittering storm. Nobles screamed, shielding their heads. The sword flew from Alaric's hand and embedded itself in a wooden pillar 10 feet distant. Alaric himself stumbled backward, colliding with the platform's edge, his face chalk white. "Do not," he said, his voice dropping to something that rumbled like distant thunder, "presume to touch what is mine."
The red light encircling Serena's hand pulsed once, then faded, though she could still sense it, warm beneath her skin. The ring itself seemed to hum with power. "I don't understand." Her voice emerged smaller than intended. "What is this? What did you—" "Acclaim." Cale rose to his full height, still holding her hand. Recognized by every law, human and vampire alike, you wear the ring of the Night Court's king. You are under my protection. He finally addressed the crowd. Any who harm her, harm me. This is madness. One of the nobles, Lord Whitmore, stepped forward, his face flushed. You can't simply appear after 3 centuries and claim one of our own. There are treaties, laws. Treaties I signed, Cale replied calmly. I know them intimately. They say nothing prohibiting whom I may or may not bond to. She's a human, a mortal girl. You'd start a war over... I would reduce your entire kingdom to ash, Cale interrupted, his tone conversational, before I permit her to come to harm. But that won't be necessary, will it? The silence that followed was suffocating. Serena's mind raced. This couldn't be real. Vampire king, ancient ring, bond. The words made no sense. An hour ago, her greatest concern was preserving her family's reputation. Now she stood marked by a creature from nightmares, while nobles stared at her as though she had grown horns. I don't want this, she said, finding her voice. I don't know you. Take your ring back. Cale's expression softened. You think I'm the villain in your story. You just destroyed my... She gestured around the ruined ballroom. My entire life, everything. No. His eyes shifted to Alaric, who remained cowering on the floor. He did. I simply refused to allow him to complete the destruction. You're a monster, Alaric spat, attempting to salvage some dignity. Everyone knows what you are, what your kind did during the Blood Wars. She's innocent. She was never innocent. Cale's voice turned cold. 300 years ago, she was Seraphina the Lightbringer, healer to the human armies. She killed more of my people with her holy fire than any soldier. He looked back at Serena. And then, in the final battle, she saved my life, sacrificed hers to do so. The ballroom spun. Serena shook her head. That's impossible. I'm not. I've never... Souls return, Cale said, especially those bound by powerful magic, especially those who die with unfinished business. He touched her face, and she was too shocked to pull away. I search for you every lifetime, every generation, and when I sensed the bond stirring tonight, when I felt you in danger, I wasn't in danger, Serena whispered, just humiliated. Humiliation can be its own form of death. Something in his tone made her look upward. In his ancient eyes, she glimpsed something unexpected, understanding, as though he too knew what it meant to be broken before a crowd. Then the world tilted. Serena's vision blurred. The glowing marks on her hand flared bright, and suddenly she wasn't standing in the ballroom anymore. She was somewhere else, somewhere dark and burning. She smelled smoke, heard screaming, felt her hands glowing with power as she pressed them against an armored chest, healing wounds that should have been fatal. Easy, Cale caught her as she collapsed. The bond's awakening is overwhelming. You need rest. No, wait, Serena tried to speak, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Alaric's voice, distant and desperate. She's cursed. The Valen girl is cursed. And Cale's quiet response, no, she's finally free. Serena woke to silence, not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind, the silence of a place where even birds refused to sing. Her eyes opened slowly. She lay in a bed so massive it could accommodate 5 people, draped in black silk that felt like water against her skin. Above her, a canopy of dark velvet obscured whatever ceiling existed beyond. The air carried the scent of old stone, and something else, something metallic and sweet that turned her stomach. Blood. She sat up quickly and immediately regretted it. Her head spun and the glowing marks on her hand throbbed in response. The obsidian ring caught the dim light, its stone pulsing with that same rhythmic beat, like a heartbeat. Where am I? Her voice echoed in the vast room. The chamber was enormous, carved stone walls covered in tapestries so ancient their images had faded to shadows. Candles burned in sconces, their flames an unnatural blue.
A fireplace large enough to stand in held a crackling fire that provided no warmth. "This is Draven Hold, my lady." Serena screamed and spun around. A woman stood beside the bed, or had she been there all along? She wore a servant's dress in deep gray, her skin pale as death, her eyes solid black with no whites at all. When she smiled, her teeth were too sharp. "Forgive me," the vampire said, bowing. "I didn't mean to startle you. I've been assigned to attend to your needs." "My needs?" Serena scrambled backward on the bed. "Where's Kale? How did I get here? I want to go home." "His Majesty is managing complications from last night's revelation. As for how you arrived," Mira gestured toward the windows, and Serena finally looked. Her blood turned to ice. Outside wasn't a garden or courtyard, it was a sheer drop into mist-shrouded darkness. Mountains rose in the distance like broken teeth against a perpetually gray sky. No sun, no moon, just endless twilight. "This isn't possible," Serena whispered. "The palace was in the capital. We're hundreds of miles from any mountains." "His Majesty carried you through the shadow roads, ancient paths that fold distance. You've been asleep for 2 days." 2 days? A knock at the door, sharp, deliberate. Mira's expression flickered with something that might have been fear before she smoothed it away. "Enter," she called. The door opened and Kale stepped inside. He looked different in his own domain, less restrained. His dark coat was gone, replaced by a simple black shirt that revealed pale forearms marked with scars, some old, some that appeared almost fresh. His crimson eyes tracked every movement Serena made as he approached. "You're afraid of me," he observed. "You kidnapped me." "I saved you." He stopped at the foot of the bed. "Your former fiancé declared you a witch in league with vampires. By morning, execution orders were signed by 3 high priests. Your mother was arrested, your estate seized." That can't be." "I had your mother relocated to safety before dawn." Kale's expression softened slightly. "She's in a coastal village protected by humans loyal to me. She's safe. But you," he gestured to the ring on her finger, "you cannot return, not yet." Serena looked down at the obsidian band. She had attempted to remove it upon waking, but it wouldn't budge. Not with force, not with soap from the basin beside the bed. It was fused to her skin as though it belonged there. "Take it off," she demanded. "Whatever this bond is, I don't want it." "I can't. You placed it on, and it accepted you. The ring chooses, Serena. If your soul wasn't Seraphina's return, it would have incinerated you to ash the moment it touched your skin. But it recognized you, just as I did."
I'm not her. I'm not your dead healer or light bringer or whatever fantasy you've constructed. Serena's voice cracked. I'm just a girl whose life you've destroyed. Your life was already destroyed. Kale's words were gentle but merciless. Alaric ensured that. I simply refuse to let you drown alone. By chaining me to you? By giving you a choice. He held out his hand. Stay here. Learn the truth about who you were, who you are. Allow me to protect you until the human kingdoms calm down. His expression darkened. Or leave. Return to your world, face the execution orders, the mobs, the priests with their holy fire. That's not a choice. No, Kale agreed quietly. It's not, but it's more than he gave you. Serena wanted to scream, to weep, to wake and discover this was all a nightmare. Instead, she looked around the vast, cold chamber, at the vampire servant, at the impossible windows, at the ancient king watching her with eyes that had witnessed centuries. Why? Her voice emerged broken. If I'm really her, if I really died for you, why bring me back into this? Kale's expression shifted into something raw and honest. Because, he said, I've been searching for 300 years, and I'm weary of being alone. The message arrived on the 3rd day, delivered by a raven with eyes too intelligent to be natural. Serena watched from the tower window as Kale read the scroll, his expression darkening with each line. She had been granted freedom to roam Dravenhold, though freedom felt like a generous term when every corridor seemed to loop back upon itself, and portraits of long-dead vampires followed her with their painted eyes. "What is it?" she asked. Kale handed her the scroll without a word. The seal was broken, but she recognized it. The High Council of the Seven Kingdoms. Her hands trembled as she read. "By order of the Holy Tribunal and the Council of Lords, Lady Serena Vallon is hereby declared a traitor to humankind, guilty of consorting with enemies of the realm. A bounty of 10,000 gold crowns is placed upon her head, dead or alive. Furthermore, the appearance of the vampire king Cale Draven is deemed an act of war. All treaties signed during the blood peace are considered void unless he surrenders the traitor within 7 days." The scroll fell from her fingers. "They're going to start a war," she whispered, "because of me." "No," Cale's voice was hard, "because Alaric Dorn's pride was wounded. He's convinced the council that you bewitched me, that you're some kind of sorceress who manipulated the vampire king to destroy humanity." He laughed, sharp and bitter, "as if I could be manipulated by anyone." "But there are bounty hunters, soldiers. They'll come." "Let them." The coldness in his tone made her look up. Cale stood at the window, backlit by the eternal twilight, and for the first time she saw him not as the creature who had saved her, but as what he truly was, a king who had waged wars that drowned kingdoms in blood. "You can't fight all of them," Serena said. "I've done it before." "That was 300 years ago. You said yourself there's a treaty." "Which they are threatening to break." Cale turned to face her, his eyes blazing. "Do you know what the blood peace cost? How many of my people died to achieve it? I relinquished territory, resources, ancient claims, all so humans could sleep safely in their beds. And now they spit on that sacrifice because one spoiled lord couldn't handle rejection." A knock interrupted them. A vampire in dark armor entered and bowed low. "Your Majesty, the Council of Generals requests an immediate audience." Cale's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'll attend shortly." When the guard departed, Serena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Your own people want to meet about me?" "They want me to kill you." He stated it so matter-of-factly that it took a moment to register. "The generals believe you're a liability, a human girl who's brought the wrath of 7 kingdoms to our doorstep." He moved closer. "They're not entirely wrong." "Then why don't you? Kill me. Send my body back. End this before it begins." "Because I didn't wait 3 centuries to find you just to watch you die again." His hand lifted, almost touching her face before falling away. "And because there's something you need to understand about our bond." He held up his own left hand. There, hidden beneath his shirt cuff, were the same glowing marks that decorated Serena's skin, faint but unmistakable. "When I placed the ring on your finger, it didn't just bind you to me, it bound me to you. Our lives are linked now. If you die," his voice dropped, "I die. If I die, you follow. That's the price of a royal bond." Serena's blood ran cold. "You're lying!" "I wish I were." Cale pulled his cuff down, concealing the marks. "It's why the generals are particularly furious. I've made myself vulnerable, mortal in a way I haven't been for over 500 years. Any assassin who reaches you reaches me." "Then break it. There has to be a way." "Only death breaks it now, yours or mine." He looked at her with those ancient, weary eyes. "So you see, your survival isn't charity, Serena. It's self-preservation." Before she could respond, shouting erupted from somewhere deep in the castle. Then a scream, cut short. Cale's expression shifted instantly. "Stay here," he commanded, moving toward the door with inhuman speed. "What's happening?" "Mira," Cale called out.
The vampire servant materialized from the shadows. Protect her. Let no one enter. Then he was gone, leaving Serena alone with Mira and the sound of distant chaos growing louder. "My lady," Mira said softly, producing a silver dagger from somewhere in her dress, "please step away from the windows." "Why? What?" The window exploded inward. A figure in dark leather landed in a crouch amid the glass, crossbow already raised. A vampire, but not one of Cale's servants. This one wore the insignia of the General's Guard. The assassin's eyes locked on Serena. "Nothing personal," he said, and fired. Time slowed. Serena saw the bolt leave the crossbow, silver-tipped, designed to kill. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't obey. The projectile sliced through the air, aimed directly at her heart. Then instinct seized control. Her hands came up without thought, and light exploded from her palms. Not firelight, not candlelight, pure, blazing white radiance that filled the chamber as though a star had been born inside it. The crossbow bolt struck the light and disintegrated into ash. The assassin screamed, shielding his eyes. Mira stared at Serena in shock. The light died quickly as it had come, leaving Serena gasping. Her hands shook violently, smoke rising from her palms. The obsidian ring pulsed so brightly it hurt to look at. What did I just do?" The assassin recovered quickly. He dropped the crossbow and drew twin daggers, lunging forward with inhuman speed. Mira intercepted him, and they collided in a blur of movement, fangs and blades too rapid for Serena's eyes to follow. "Run!" Mira shouted, blocking a strike meant for Serena's throat. Serena didn't think. She bolted for the door, her heart hammering. Behind, the sounds of combat intensified. She ran down corridors she didn't recognize, the castle twisting around her like a maze designed to confuse.
She burst through a set of double doors and stumbled to a halt. The walls were covered in murals, ancient, faded, but still visible. They depicted scenes of war, humans and vampires locked in brutal combat, cities burning, rivers running red. But one section made her breath catch. A woman with long, dark hair, hands glowing with white fire, standing between two armies. Behind her, a vampire king on his knees, wounded, dying. The woman's hands pressed against his chest, light pouring from them, even as human soldiers rushed forward with swords raised. The next panel showed her falling, pierced by a dozen blades. The final panel showed the vampire king cradling her body, his face twisted in anguish as the light faded from her hands. "No," Serena whispered. But even as she denied it, memories crashed through her mind like shattering glass. Running through a battlefield, her healer's robes soaked in blood. Not her blood, never her blood. The light protected her. Finding him beneath a collapsed siege tower, armor shattered, black blood pooling beneath him, his crimson eyes flickering as life drained away. Pressing her hands to his chest despite everything she'd been taught, despite knowing vampires were monsters, despite the screaming of her fellow humans behind her. "Don't die, please don't die." And then, light, power she'd never experienced before, pouring out of her like a flood, healing what should never be healed, saving what should never be saved. The betrayal in her commander's eyes as he ordered her execution, the sensation of steel sliding between her ribs, Cale's roar of anguish. "Serena," she gasped, jerking back to the present. Cale stood in the doorway, blood splattered across his face and hands. Not his blood, she somehow knew. He took in her expression, then followed her gaze to the murals. His face cycled through several emotions before settling on resignation. "You remember," he said quietly. Her voice broke. "I see things, feel things, but they can't be real. I can't be." Seraphina the Lightbringer,
the only human healer ever to master holy fire completely, the woman who saved the enemy king and was executed by her own people for treason. Kale approached slowly. The woman I loved, the woman I failed to save. Tears burned Serena's eyes. You're implanting these memories in my head, some kind of vampire trick. I can't manipulate memories. He stopped a few feet away. What you're experiencing, what you're seeing, that's your soul recognizing itself. The bond awakens what was dormant. The assassin, Serena said suddenly. He came through the window. He tried to kill me. Captain Thorne, one of my generals. Kale's expression darkened. He believed removing you would resolve our political problems. He was mistaken. Did Mira kill him? Yes. Your own people want me dead. Some of them. Kale looked at the mural of Serafina healing him. Others remember what you did, how you attempted to stop the war even when both sides craved blood, how your light didn't just destroy, it could heal even the undead. He touched the painted image of her face. You were extraordinary. You are extraordinary. I don't feel extraordinary. Serena looked at her still smoking palms. I feel terrified. Good. Fear means you comprehend the danger. Kale turned to face her fully. There's something I haven't told you about why I disappeared 300 years ago, about why I never took another bride, never produced an heir, never moved forward. What? After you died in my arms, I made a vow. I swore to every dark power that would listen that I would find you again, that I would bring your soul back regardless of the cost. And then I learned what the cost would be. Cold dread settled Serena's stomach. What cost? To anchor your soul to this world again, I had to relinquish something of equal value. Kale's voice was barely a whisper. I surrendered my ability to die. Serena's mind reeled. You're immortal? Vampires don't die of old age. We can still be killed. Beheading, holy water, sufficient trauma. He shook his head. But I can't. Anymore. I employed forbidden magic, bargained with entities that shouldn't be named, made myself truly eternal, unkillable. His laugh was bitter. A king who cannot die, searching for a soul that keeps being reborn, hoping each time would be the last. How many times? Serena asked. How many times have you found me? Kale's silence was answer enough. You found me before, and I died again, and again. This is the 7th time, and this time I'm not letting you go. The council of generals gathered in the throne room like vultures circling a corpse. Serena stood beside Kale, acutely aware of every crimson eye fixed upon her. There were 12 of them, ancient vampires who had served as Kale's war commanders for centuries. Their combined age exceeded 5,000 years, and their hostility filled the chamber like smoke. This is madness, Your Majesty, General Varick said first, his scarred face twisted in disgust. The human kingdoms are mobilizing. Our border outposts report armies gathering, and you shield the cause of it all. I shield my bonded queen, Kale corrected coldly. She's not our queen. Another general, Lady Nyx, slammed her fist on the stone table. She's a mortal girl playing dress-up with powers she doesn't understand. Captain Thorne died attempting to save us from your sentimentality. Captain Thorne died committing treason. Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. As will anyone else who raises a hand against her. Then you'll slaughter your entire council. Varick leaned forward. Because we're not alone in this, my king. Half the court wants her gone. They remember the blood wars. They remember how her kind used holy fire to burn our children alive. Serena flinched. The memories were still fresh, seeing herself, Seraphina, standing on battlefields with hands blazing, watching vampires scream as her light consumed them. She had been a weapon, a holy executioner. "I didn't," she started. "Silence," Varric snapped. "You have no voice here, human." "She has every voice here." Kale rose from his throne, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "She bears my ring. She carries my mark. She is—" "Untested, unproven," Lady Nyx interrupted. "Unproven. You claim she's Saracena returned, but where's the proof? Any human wearing that ring would gain access to residual power. It doesn't make her a queen." A tense silence fell. Then Varric smiled, cold and calculating. "There is a way to settle this, an ancient right that hasn't been invoked in centuries." Kale's expression shifted. "No." "The blood trial," Varric continued, ignoring him. "If her soul truly belongs at your side, she'll survive it. If not," he shrugged, "problem solved." "Absolutely not. The trial is designed to shatter minds. She's barely begun to remember." "Then she'll fail," Lady Nyx said simply, "and we'll know she's just a mortal pretender who got lucky with an ancient ring." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. Serena watched Kale's jaw tighten. She could see him calculating, searching for an escape route, but the generals had boxed him in. Refuse, and he'd lose their support entirely. Accept, and she might not survive. "What is it? This blood trial?" Serena asked, quietly.
"A test of worthiness," Varric explained, his smile widening. "The vampire rite for confirming royal bonds. You'll be submerged in a pool of sacred blood while ancient magic forces you to confront your deepest sins, your greatest failures. Most humans go mad within minutes, but if your soul is truly Seraphina's, if you truly belong beside our king, you'll emerge intact. And if I don't? Then you die screaming," Lady Nyx said pleasantly, "and we'll finally have peace." Kale turned to Serena, his eyes blazing with fury and fear. "You don't have to do this. I can manage the council another way." "By fighting your own people?" Serena looked around the room at the hostile faces. She thought of the mural, Seraphina attempting to stop a war by standing between two armies. "If I don't do this, they'll never accept me. The war will come anyway." "You could die." "You said I've died 6 times already. Maybe the 7th time's the charm." "Serena." "I'll do it," I announced to the council. "Tonight." The generals exchanged glances. They had expected resistance, fear. Instead, Serena felt something else rising inside her, something that tasted like old memories and older power. Let them test her. Let them attempt to break her. She had survived Alaric's humiliation, she had survived assassination, and somewhere deep in her soul she had survived death itself 6 times over. What was one more trial? The Chamber of Echoes lay deep beneath Dravenhold, carved from black stone that seemed to swallow light. In its center sat a pool 15 feet across, filled with liquid so dark it looked like solidified night. "Blood from every vampire who's sworn fealty to the Night Court for 1,000 years, Varric explained as they descended the stairs, "mixed with holy water and binding magic. It will show you truth, the truth of who you are, who you were, and who you could become." Serena stared at the pool. Her reflection didn't appear on its surface. The council formed a circle around it. Kale stood at the edge, his face like carved stone, but she could see his hands trembling. "Last chance," he said quietly. "We can find another way." "No." Serena removed her shoes, her dress, standing in just a simple white shift. "We can't." She looked at the obsidian ring on her finger. It pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat, like a promise. Then she stepped into the blood. The liquid was cold as death and thick as oil. It clung to her skin as she waded deeper, knees, waist, chest. When it reached her neck, she looked back at Cale one last time. His expression was breaking. "Come back to me," he said. Serena took a breath and went under. The blood closed over her head and the world dissolved into screaming darkness. Serena opened her eyes in a field of corpses. She knew this place, this moment, the final battle of the Blood Wars, 30 years into the conflict that had transformed kingdoms into graveyards. Smoke choked the air, fires burned on both horizons. And there, kneeling in the mud with a sword through his chest, was Cale. Younger, less scarred, but the same crimson eyes flickering as his blood soaked into the earth. "No," Serena whispered. But she wasn't Seraphina anymore. She was Seraphina, and her hands were already glowing with holy fire. "This is memory," she told herself. "This already happened." But it felt real. The heat of the flames, the screams of dying soldiers, the choice burning in her chest like swallowed coals. Behind her, Commander Aldrich shouted orders. "Leave him. The monster dies here. Holy fire. Cleanse this field." Monster. They called him Monster, but Seraphina had seen him spare wounded soldiers, had watched him weep over his own dead, had learned that vampires sang to their children and carved poetry into stone and mourned their losses, just like humans did. She ran to him anyway, pressed her hands to his chest anyway, poured her light into him anyway, knowing it was treason, knowing what would come next. "Why?" Cale gasped as his wounds began to close. "Because," Seraphina said, tears streaming down her face, "mercy shouldn't be monstrous." The scene shifted. Now she stood in a courtyard, bound to a stake. The council of high priests surrounded her, their faces twisted with righteous fury. "You healed the enemy. You saved the vampire king with sacred power meant to destroy his kind." "I saved a life," Seraphina said. "Isn't that what healers do?" "You betrayed humanity." "I tried to save it from itself, from endless war." The flames rose, real flames this time, not her holy fire. They burned and burned, and... She was in Dravenhold's throne room, centuries later, wearing a different face but the same soul. 20 years old, auburn hair, a merchant's daughter that caught the vampire king's attention. Cale had found her again, 3rd lifetime. "You don't remember me?" he said, hope and desperation warring in his expression. "Should I?" This version of her, Elise she'd been called, looked at him with curiosity but no recognition. "You died for me once. I swore I'd find you again." But there was no bond yet, no ring, just a king attempting to convince a reincarnated soul to remember love from a previous life. It hadn't worked. Elise had fled, terrified, had died 3 months later from plague, still not remembering, still not believing. The visions accelerated. 4th lifetime, killed by vampire hunters who discovered her connection to Cale. 5th lifetime, drowned herself when the memories became too overwhelming, too painful. 6th lifetime, murdered by human zealots on her wedding day with Cale, before the bond could be completed. Each death, she watched Cale break a little more. Each lifetime, she saw him become more desperate, more dangerous, more willing to trade pieces of his soul for another chance. This is the trial, Serena realized. It's showing me the price of his bond, the cost of being loved by someone who can't let go. The darkness shifted one final time. Now she stood in the Moonlight Palace ballroom, but different. This was a vision of what could have been. Alaric smiling genuinely as he placed the ring on her finger, her mother healthy and proud, a life of comfort and normalcy stretching ahead. No vampires, no magic, no war. No Cale. "You don't understand," Serena said to the darkness.
I remember now, all of it. Every life, every death, every moment Kale searched while I was lost. She held up her hand, the ring blazing with light. I didn't save him because I was foolish. I saved him because some things are worth breaking for. Even if it means war? Even then? Even if you die again? Serena smiled, and it was fierce. I've died 6 times already. Death doesn't frighten me anymore. Being a coward does. The blood around her erupted with light, not destroying, not burning, healing. White radiance poured from her body, mixing with the ancient darkness, transforming it into something new, something that had never existed before.
Light and shadow merged, human and vampire unified. When Serena broke the surface of the pool, she wasn't gasping for air, she was glowing. The council stared in shock. Even Varric had no words. Cal's expression cracked into something like joy and relief and disbelief all at once. Serena climbed from the pool, the blood sliding off her skin like water. The obsidian ring burned so bright it illuminated the entire chamber. "Well," she looked at the generals, "do I pass?" Lady Nyx dropped to one knee, then Varric, then all of them, one by one, until only Cal remained standing. He crossed the distance between them and kissed her, fierce and desperate and grateful. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "Welcome home, my queen." Above them, somewhere in the world of sunlight and mortals, war drums began to beat. The armies arrived within a week, 7 kingdoms united under one banner, not peace, but pride. Alaric had convinced them that the vampire king's return threatened everything the blood peace had built, that Serena was a sorceress who had enchanted Cal to destroy humanity from within. Lies, but powerful ones. From Dravenhold's walls, Serena watched the forces gather like a steel tide across the valley. Thousands of soldiers, siege engines, priests with blessed weapons. Banners snapped in the wind. She recognized her own family's colors among them, now seized by the crown. "They'll attack at dawn," Cal said beside her. His generals had wanted to strike first, use the cover of night to slaughter the humans while they slept. He'd refused. "Because of me," Serena said. "Because I'm weary of easy violence." He took her hand, the one bearing his ring. "You taught me that once. I'm trying to remember." Below, a herald approached under a white flag, his voice magically amplified. "The council demands surrender. Deliver the traitor Serena Vallon, and the vampire king must submit to trial for breaking the blood peace. You have until dawn." Serena felt Cal tense beside her. "I have a different idea," she said quietly. When the sun rose, filtered gray through Dravenhold's eternal twilight, it wasn't Cal who emerged from the gates. It was Serena, alone. The human army rippled with confusion. Soldiers raised weapons but held their positions. At the center of the host, Alaric sat on a white horse, resplendent in borrowed armor. When he saw her, his face twisted with triumph. "Seize her," he commanded. A dozen soldiers rushed forward. They grabbed Serena's arms, forcing her to her knees in the mud. The army pressed closer, eager to witness the traitor humbled. Alaric dismounted and walked toward her with deliberate slowness, savoring the moment. "Look at you," he said loud enough for the front ranks to hear, "crawling back after consorting with monsters. Did you think he'd save you, that demon king?" He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up. "You're still just a broken bride, still worthless." Serena met his eyes and smiled. "I was right," she said. "I was broken." Her hands began to glow. "But you have no idea what I've become." Light exploded from her body. Not destructive, not burning, revealing. It spread across the battlefield like dawn breaking, and everywhere it touched, truth became visible. The soldiers cried out in shock as images materialized in the light, memories pulled from Alaric himself, projected for everyone to witness. Alaric meeting with vampire mercenaries in secret, paying them to attack human villages so he could blame Cal and start a war.
Alaric forging documents that proved the Valen family's false nobility, documents he had created himself to justify breaking the engagement. Alaric in bed with 3 different noble wives, blackmailing their husbands for political support. And finally, Alaric standing before the council, tears streaming down his face, lying about how Serena had bewitched him, playing the victim while plotting to exploit the war for his own advancement. The light faded, the images vanished, silence filled the valley. "Release her," a voice commanded. One of the generals, Lord Commander Thrace, stepped forward, his face pale with fury. "Now!" The soldiers holding Serena scrambled backward. Alaric's face had transformed from triumph to ash. She used dark magic to... "That was truth magic," a high priest said, his voice shaking. "Holy light cannot lie. It's impossible." The army began to fracture. Nobles shouted accusations. Soldiers threw down weapons. The unified front crumbled like a sandcastle in the tide. Then shadow poured across the battlefield. Cal materialized beside Serena, moving through darkness like stepping through a doorway. His eyes blazed crimson as he surveyed the chaos. "You exploited her," he said to Alaric, his voice soft and deadly. "You shattered her, humiliated her, transformed her pain into political theater." He placed a hand on Serena's shoulder. "And in so doing, you gave me back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever." "I didn't... You can't..." Alaric stumbled backward. "I can," Cal said, "and I will, but not through violence." He looked at Lord Commander Thrace. "Take him. Let human justice handle human crimes." As soldiers surrounded Alaric, Serena stood. Her entire body hummed with power. The light of Seraphina merged with the darkness of Cal's bond. Something new, something unprecedented. "The war's over," she announced, her voice carrying across the valley with unnatural clarity. "Not because either side won, but because I'm choosing to end it." She looked at the army, at the priests, at the terrified and angry and confused faces. "I am Serena Valen. I am Seraphina the Lightbringer reborn. I am bonded to the Vampire King, and I am finished hiding." She raised her hand, the obsidian ring blazing. "We can have peace, real peace, or we can have a war that will make the blood wars look like a skirmish. Your choice."
Lord Commander Thrace knelt first, then the priests, then slowly, impossibly, the entire army. 6 weeks later, Serena stood in the Moonlight Palace ballroom, the same hall where Alaric had destroyed her, but now she wore black and silver, the colors of the Night Court. The obsidian ring gleamed on her finger beside a second band, white gold, blessed by human priests and vampire mages alike. Around her, nobles from 7 kingdoms mingled with vampire dignitaries. Impossible, terrifying. Kale appeared at her side, offering his hand. "Ready, my queen?" Serena looked at the assembled crowd, some hostile, some curious, all watching to see if this fragile peace would hold. She thought of the girl who had stood here weeks ago, desperate and humiliated, believing her world had ended. That girl had been correct. Her old world had ended. This was something better. "Ready," she said, taking Kale's hand. Together, they stepped forward to sign the Treaty of Two Crowns, the document that would bind human and vampire kingdoms in alliance for the first time in history. A noble approached, Lady Whitmore, who had laughed loudest at Serena's humiliation. She curtsied low, her face carefully neutral. "Your Majesty, if I may ask, do you forgive Lord Alaric for what he did?" Serena glanced at Kale, then back at the room that had witnessed her lowest moment. "Forgive?" she smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. "No, but I thank him." "Thank him?" He gave me my beginning. He shattered me in exactly the right way, at exactly the right time, in exactly the right place. Without the humiliation, I would have never been saved, never remembered, never become this. She raised her hand, and light and shadow danced between her fingers. White and crimson merged perfectly. "So thank you, Alaric," she said, to the empty air, knowing somehow he could hear from whatever prison cell now held him. "Thank you for showing me what I was worth." "Nothing, according to you." Cale squeezed her hand gently, his eyes glowing with pride and something deeper. "Turns out," Serena continued, her voice ringing clear, "nothing was exactly what I needed to become everything." The assembly erupted in applause, tentative at first, then genuine. The treaty was signed, the alliance sealed. As Cale led her from the ballroom, Serena lumped back one last time at the platform where she had been broken. The obsidian ring pulsed warm against her skin, a heartbeat that matched Cale's, a bond 7 lifetimes in the making, a love that had survived death itself. She had been humiliated, she had been destroyed, she had been reborn. And now, finally, she was exactly where she belonged.